chose the name Mud Theater because for many of us from under-resourced communities, mud was our first toy. It's what sparked our creativity. Now as we journey through life,
we get our stories out the mud.
All right. Really grateful for everyone to be here today. So it's truly inspiring to see community members come together to support an important conversation like this one. First, we want to thank the GhostLight for hosting this, for having us. Then, want to thank my panelists, especially Brian. You have a really inspiring story, and I want to thank you personally for bringing it here to Ben Harbor. And of course, to all of you. There's no conversation without you. We could talk to each other, but it's a blessing to be able to look at all of your faces. So thank you for coming. All right, so. Give it up for James. Thank you, Paul. Give it up for Paul. So before I introduce our panelists, to my left are some of my cast and members of the crew. So I have Monique. She played. Monique Marchand. I didn't know we were doing both. Okay. Isis. Oh, sorry. Pause. Isis. We have Daniel. Darren. And our great director, Aaron Bozeman. All right, so now I'll read down to my right. So to my immediate right, we have Pastor Jay Haynes. I like how your wife started to clap. Oh yeah. So Pastor Haynes is a pastor at Second Chance True Gospel Ministries. He's chaplain at Corwell Health under Safety and Security, chaplain for the Berrien County Sheriff's Department, member of the Opioid Oversight Committee for Berrien County, board member at Salvation Army, member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and he's been providing spiritual care at KPEP for 17 years. Pastor Haynes. Next, we have Shatam Tucker. Shatan is a parole agent with the Michigan Department of Corrections, supervising the parole population in Berrien County. He works closely with Michigan Works and Connexus by ensuring that parolees are receiving transitional housing for those who are in need, also ensuring that they receive assistance with clothing, transportation, employment assistance, and help with security deposits on housing. Referring them to substance abuse treatment, sexual abuse treatment, cognitive behavioral counseling, etc. Making sure that they're abiding by their parole stipulations and obeying the law, protecting the community and reducing recidivism, making sure these individuals are readjusting to society with minimum barriers, and connecting them with social groups and peers. He's also an adjunct professor at Lake Michigan College, coaching and providing leadership to our future professionals in law enforcement and criminal justice. Shatan Tucker. All right. Let's see if I can. Okay. Next we have Pastor Andre Palmer, pastor at Bethel CRC. I thought it might have been a typo. So, Pastor Palmer. Pastor Palmer is also a resource specialist for the Offender Success Program through Connexus and Michigan Works. As a resource specialist, he works closely with the Michigan Department of Corrections to provide reentry services to individuals who are reentering the community after being incarcerated. He also serves as the president of the Southwest Michigan Ministerial Alliance and also vice president of the Berrien County Association of Churches. Pastor Palmer. Next we have Miss Charmaine Sanders. Executive Director, Title IX and Start to Finish at Lake Michigan College. Start to Finish serves students from Benton Harbor, Promise Zone schools, and students who spent time in foster care. Also the co-chair of the Race Relations Council of Berrien County. Ms. Sanders. And we all got to watch the video, so you've heard a little bit about Mr. Brian Beals so far. Would you like to say anything before we start?
Really an esteemed panel. I'm really privileged to be in company with you guys in community. But some of the work that I do now, I work for the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice, and we're teaching guys on the inside how to write success plans because we want their reentry to society to be, as successful as possible. We take those plans and we send them to their families and give them like resources to make those plans a reality so they can start their journey to success even before they out. And they also work for Restore Justice, and it's a policy institute, and our main focus is on juvenile justice. We were successful in changing the law in 2019 where anyone in Illinois who was sentenced to life as a juvenile could get a parole hearing. And right now the main mission is to make that law retroactive because it starts at 2019 and going forward. But there are hundreds of guys in the system who were sentenced to life as a juvenile who need the same because every life has a dignity. Every life should be respected. So, and as Mud Theater, Executive Director of the Mud Theater Project.
Thank you. We also have Mr. Ernie Hudson on screen. Mr. Hudson, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, I'm on the board there at GhostLight, and I'm from Benton Harbor, the community, but I'm just really honored to be able to sit in and hear what's going on, and just so proud of what you guys are doing. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. So before we get into questions, I just want to read a little bit about Mud Theater. So the mission statement at Mud Theater is, the Mud Theater Project uses the power of storytelling to amplify of those who have been silenced and to illuminate the concerns of our shared community. Their motto is transformational therapeutic rehabilitation through the arts. We believe that the inherent ability of artistic expression is to spark change, foster healing, and cultivate hope in even the most overlooked corners of society. So today, could we please take a moment, give a round of applause to my castmates? So, take a moment. So, before we go further, we had so much fun doing this production. And not a lot of time. We all came together. I feel like I just gained a few new friends. We hang out almost every day. So, Quinn, thank you. But CLYDE's themes of healing, forgiveness, redemption, and amplifying voice to marginalized communities seem to be in sync with your motto, Mr. Bill. So for myself, Pastor Haynes, and the other panelists on the ground here in Ben Harbor working towards these same goals, it's really an honor to have you here again. So for the questions, feel free to grab a mic, hop in, and let's try to keep our answers respectful, because we don't want to be here the entire night. Some of it, the entire night. All right, so what kind of change are we looking to spark with this conversation? Anybody? Pastor Palmer look like something burning in there.
since you put me on the spot. I think the main change that we're trying to achieve is a transformational change, and to share with our participants or those who are re-entering into our communities just the opportunity to be connected to resources and to know what those resources are, and just continue to help them forge a path of success, and help them remove those barriers and walk alongside them with patience, because sometimes we can get a little bit, impatient with them as they transform and as they're re-entering the community. And I think that that's the key, teamwork, having them feel like they have a team to help them plot that success. And so we get to work with parole agents, and we get to work with other resources in the community. So I believe transformational change is critical.
I'd also like to say that I think it's important to know that there's real people behind these stories. I think about the character Tish, I believe was the name. At the beginning, you just see this angry woman. And then later you hear her story and you're like, well, yeah, you got a sick kid. You're trying to do something to help her. So you break into some place, you get arrested, go to jail. You have a baby's dad who isn't taking care of the child. When you hear all of that add up, you see why the person got to where they are. And when you're dealing with people in our community and you hear their stories, it makes you realize, these are real people behind these stories. Prior to my time at Lake Michigan College, I spent just shy of 15 years working for the foster care system. And every time you did your initial interview with a client when the child was removed and then you became part of the case, once you heard the story, you 100% understood why we were here. And so I think that we just have to be very cognizant of understanding that they're all real people, and we need to do more to help them so that we aren't seeing these situations happen over and over and over.
First, I really got to commend the cast. Y'all carried the weight of what reentry felt like. It was so authentic. And I say that from a place where I work in reentry every day. It was more than believable. And the physicality that y'all brought to this production, it was just really incredible. Like really, really incredible and so authentic and real. But to the question of change, we need systemic change. So we have to look at the system and examine it, because part of the negative outcomes is what happens in prison, that there isn't outlets for guys to create programs. Like, it took me 20 years to gain the confidence of someone inside this to let me create a program, without repercussion, because if you step up and stand out as a leader, the system comes from you, and you have to have the courage to do that. And so systemic change is the goal, like having a meeting like this where you have different stakeholders from the criminal justice system. This is a great start for what we need to happen in our communities.
Thank you.
One thing that we do in KPEP and in the Berrien County Sheriff Department is role modeling. Because what we see a lot in the system when I go in is that a lot of guys will minister to them, but a lot of guys fall short because we don't role model what we actually preach when we go into, some guys don't. And I tell the guys when we go in there, we need to be the same person when we go in there as the same person that we come out. They can't see us doing one thing and then they see us out in the community doing something else, because that gets very confusing. People don't understand, and they want realness. So one thing that we try to do is to role model what we believe in. is that for me, I live and breathe the gospel as far as trying to be the man of God that God has called me to be, not just in Berrien County Jail or in the KPEP, but when you see me out of the street, on the streets, I'm not any different than what you see when I'm in the KPEP or the Berrien County Jail. And one thing you cannot do, you can't fool the guys that have been serving some time in the system. They know if you're manipulating. They know if you're just doing this to get the star on your back, or you just want to say, hey, I did something good. When I bring the guys in, it has to be heartfelt, because people can pick that up. I mean, if you're genuine, people are going to pick that up immediately. Or if you're just doing that because you want to be seen, or you want the star on your back and just tell somebody, it becomes a lifestyle change for us and the guys that I go in, that they do it because we want to see guys change, and we want to exemplify what we're actually teaching and preaching and telling them about, because I truly believe that it's the gospel that's going to change guys' their lives around. I know we have a ministry in the Berrien County Jail called Reach the Forgotten, and they do a great job in there. But the main thing is they got to see you live the life. Can you live the life? Because you teach it, but can you live it? And if you can't, then it becomes very confusing to the guys that are coming out of the system. Like, they're not even doing it. So why are you preaching to me? Why are you teaching me? Or why are you telling me this and you're not doing it yourself? So with us, it's a realness about, once we come out of that jail, once we come out of that KPEP, that you're living the life that you preach about.
I want to leave you out, Shaitan.
All right, everyone else spoke, so I have to speak. But yes, I would like to piggyback on the role model aspect as well. I mean, I'm a Ben Harbor 2007. James, 2007,
yes,
right?
That's
07, class 07.
Yes,
Ben Harbor graduate, and I believe in my office, I think I am the only one that graduated from Ben Harbor High School, and you know, there are like a lot of stereotypes, you know, and people would say, hey, did you go to St. Joe or Eau Claire? No, and I'm happy and I'm proud for where I come from, and I do carry myself as a role model to these individuals. And I would also like to say that it's not too late to change. And I see a lot of guys that I went to school with, and they're surprised when they see me, and they're proud. You would think I would get a lot of feedback and negative, you know, because I'm working closely with the police, but no, that's not the case. They're proud, and I'm happy that I can be that person, and you know, I can smile and and be that positive role model to them, and it's very rewarding to give back to the community. So and that was my whole purpose of doing this, because you may hear some people. I'll never forget when I was attending Lake Michigan College, I heard someone say, "Oh, I just want to arrest someone," and that should not be the goal. That the goal is to help these people. So no, and I don't want to arrest people. I don't want to do a lot of paperwork either. So.
So in this conversation about what is the change we're looking to spark, what are some of the tools that you use in that work? I know some of them are obvious, of course, you know, like helping them find employment and things like that. But for instance, we always say, you'll see like somebody will make a post on Facebook, for instance, oh, you know, I'm home, and you'll see up and down the comments, everybody saying welcome home, right? So in saying welcome home, how do we welcome them home? What are we offering?
Well, one of the things that we do, being an employee of also Corewell, is that we have the Center for Wellness, that when the guys come out of the facility, is to give them tools. How do we get housing? How do we get back on our feet? So we kind of direct them to Center for Wellness, and also Prison Pillars does a fantastic job as far as helping men get back on their feet. So we have resources in the community that we can lead the guys to, and that's what we do. So.
Can I go? Okay. So Connexus Michigan Works is my 9 to 5, and of course I work for I'm an employment resource specialist. But one of the things that we find immediately, of course, as a barrier as they re-enter the community is employment. And so we partner with companies all across. So I serve 3 counties. I serve Berrien County, I serve Cass County, and I serve Van Buren County. So I have to build relationships with employers. And one of the great incentives that we have with the Offender Success Program is that we are able to do a wage reimbursement with our participants. So we will talk to the employer and we will share with them that we can pay for the first 4 weeks of wages for any of our participants if that's something that they are open to. And so we push that and try to help those participants realize that this is something, it's just really free money for these companies that will partner with us so that our participants would have a step, a good footing or a step forward in terms of their employment.
That's amazing.
So one of the things we really try to implement is people first language. So we don't use terms that anyone in society would deem offensive. So we don't call people offenders. We don't call people felons. We just call them people, or formerly incarcerated. So that's one part of the mission. Another part is like when you do long-term time, like anything, to me, past a day, but let's just say 5 years, it erodes at the human spirit. And what we discovered with theater, like just really stepping into someone else's shoes, it just creates a pathway for you to reimagine what being human feels like again. And we were purposely writing roles that made men face redemption. Like what does forgiveness look like? We only perform stuff that we write. And I'm not trying, so it's like we write for a purpose. And that purpose is to reignite the human spirit in people. And that's what we, want to do in prisons, because we have several programs that exist in the Illinois prison system that Mud Theater support, but also in the community before you go to prison. Because our communities are so damaged that the erosion of the human spirit starts to lead you to prison. So we have to invest in our communities. Like James and I met earlier at lunch, and we were talking about the social determinants of health. And we was talking about, like, James say, healthy people create healthy communities. And I agree with him. But the flip side is healthy communities create healthy people. So that's what we need, a full-on approach from everybody in the community, whether you've been a victim of crime to find redemption or someone who's harmed. We need to figure out how to repair the harm. And we just found with Mud Theater that theater was just like that canvas that we can just write that story over and over and over again and examine so many ways to do that.
One tool that we've established also in our church is a men's group. We call it the Second Chance Men Group. And the ministry that I have, the reason why we call it Second Chance, because we believe that men need a second chance, and third chance, and fourth chance, as many chances as possible. But we have a men's group that we call Second Chance. But the scripture that we use is restore the breach, to restore man back in their rightful position in the homes, in the church, and in the community. And we meet on a Thursday. When we first started off, it started off as a like celebrate recovery. There weren't too many men coming. I said, we need to open this up to all men. The scripture says iron sharpens iron. And so when men come together, women don't have a problem doing it. Women can come together at any time. We, us knucklehead men, sometimes have a problem coming together talking unless it's a football game or a basketball game. Mm-hmm. But to get men together and just talk about a life situation, because what's said in that room is stayed in that room. And what's interesting about this is that we had the women in our church said, hey, we want to help you. you, they actually cook the meal. And I'm talking about chicken lasagna, spaghetti, and things of that nature. So that kind of appeals to the men also. So we sit around and we talk about what's going on, how we can build one another up, and how we can encourage one another. And then we have resources, men that have come from all different walks of life that say, hey, I'll walk beside you, I'll help disciple you. And I think as men, that's what other men need, is that we walk beside one another, disciple one another, encourage one another, pick one another up. And when we come together, I think it's a force to be reckoned with. And we're not coming to look at the football. We're coming to find out in the scriptures, how can we be better men, and how can we build one another up. So we call that group the Second Chance Men's Group, Restorers of the Breach, because we want to restore men back to their rightful place in the community.
So I work at Lake Michigan College, and so the first thing we do is work with students to get their education. So that, I think, is one of the great equalizers, is by being able to obtain a college degree. But we also work with our students while they're there on things like soft skills. We work with them on emotional intelligence. We've brought police officers in to talk to the students about what to do during a traffic stop. We talk with the students. One of my former students is here right now, and he can tell you we spent hours and hours and hours just talking and getting to know each other, and diving deep into the students' interests. And whatever you come to me and say that you're interested in, I'm going to try to find a way to help you dive deep into that. And I myself do, and I encourage my staff to do, we go above and beyond every day. And Lake Michigan College is a 2-year college, so when we have our students go off to 4-year colleges and universities, 9 times out of 10, it's us taking them to their orientation. It's us taking them to go get the things they need for their dorm or their apartment, because often their families either don't have the resources or they don't know that these are things they need to do to help the students be successful. And so, my going above and beyond, one of my students right now has my pots and pans in his apartment at Western Michigan because he needed pots and pans. He needed everything to be able to move into an apartment. So I'm like, here, you take this. I've been wanting some new pots and pans anyway. Let me go buy myself some, but I'm always going to do something like that because, like you said, iron sharpens iron. I need to be able to put into them so that they can go on and do these things, because often they don't have the foundation, not just at home, but also, unfortunately, in the K-12 system that a lot of our students come through. And my foster care students often have bounced around, so they don't have any stability either. So that's where we come in, and that's where we try to make that our job, is to offer those things to the students.
Thank you for that. For our cast, because I want to keep theater centered in this as well, what are some of the things that you did to kind of engage with your character and figure out, like, where should you take it, or how do they feel? How did you build empathy with your character?
Well, I mean, that's just the job, regardless if they were formerly incarcerated or not. I try to approach every character I play with empathy and an open mind and an open heart. So I look at Raphael the same way I'd look at Hamlet or any other character. It's just like, who is he? Where does he come from? How do I fit into his shoes? How are we similar? How does his story affect the way that I would move in the world? And so, yeah, just really empathy forward. That's it, yeah.
So, and diving into the character, and anybody can answer, and diving into that character, are there any things in the script or in that interaction that showed you maybe things that you didn't see before for people that come home?
Say that one more time. Hold on.
So, I'll say it a different way. Are there pieces of, like, say, Raphael's story that you found like, wow, I didn't realize that would be a thing, Like in their everyday life? Because sometimes when you haven't walked in someone's shoes, you can't see what they see. You can't see it through their eyes, right? So are there any things that stood out to you as Daniel?
Yeah. I would say, like his fear specifically of CLYDE, fear of like going back, fear of standing up sometimes, of saying something. I noticed there's a scene where Isis was saying, or Tish was saying how much I want to do like Monty and da-da-da, and CLYDE was kind of talking smack a little bit, and Raphael's just real quiet. And I noticed that there's like me as Daniel would want to stand up and say something, but Raphael is like, let me not make waves, let me not make myself a target. And that's something I noticed and recognized in Raphael, kind of diving deep. And I think a lot of that comes from inside not wanting a target, not wanting to make waves, just wanting to keep your head down. And how is he actively fighting that towards the end when he does walk out? He stands up, he says no, and he moves forward. Yeah. Someone else, please take that.
Okay. Going to the first question that you asked, I know for me, theater, acting in general, ironically doesn't deal with acting, it deals with being. So when I first received the script, when I learned that my character was formerly incarcerated, one of the first things I did was research and talk to people who were formerly incarcerated in my family, because I want to tell the most authentic story for audiences. So yeah, one of the things that I learned about Tish, almost every show that I do, is that she's just super real. And a lot of the things that she wants, I want. And I know that sounds wild, but oftentimes we can overlook certain people that we don't interact with every single day. And yeah, we have a lot of the same wants, we have a lot of the same desires, the same needs. And I just found her very interesting. One of the first things, actually, Aaron taught me this, is never to judge your character. So when you get it, you study the character, you figure out why they act, why they respond to certain situations, how they respond. And yeah, so I have so much love for Tish now, currently, but yeah.
Yeah, going back to the first question and piggybacking off the never judging your character, I feel like CLYDE is someone who is very easy to judge. And so when I think about finding the humanity in these stories and understanding what are the things that happened to CLYDE, what systems, what people, what communities failed her that created this ferocious monster, right? And how she became, I think, a mirror, holding up a mirror to what happens to people who are not able to be redeemed, and why can't they be? And it's usually because they've been failed by people systems before that, and then they just kind of replicate that toxicity, that learned behavior, because it's what they know, it's how they survive. So that was one of the things that I think I learned through this story. And what I loved about Lynn Nottage's writing was that all of the stories, they weren't cast as these villains or murders. It was very human, people who were just trying to survive and take care of the people that they love. And that's how people end up in these situations, or how some people end up in these situations. So really understanding that, again, it's about do people have what they need to live a healthy, sustainable life, and what can we do to create that? Yeah. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm going to answer in kind of a reverse order, because they go hand in hand for me. The question of how I got into character and got into that mindset, as well as things I didn't expect from the perspective of a formerly incarcerated person. Because for me, I actually auditioned for Raphael's character originally. And Paul called me after my callback and was like, hey, you did really great. We would love for you to play the role of Jason. He's a white supremacist. I can send you the script so you can read the character and let me know what you think. And it was the line where Jason says, the tats just tell you that I was trying to survive. That really made me realize, one, how important the character was, and what he had to do, because it's said in the script that he's got this face full of tats, and we didn't do any actually racist tats, but it's implied in the script that they are very racist and very offensive. And so he comes in and everybody immediately makes these assumptions. And rightfully so, it's literally tattooed on his face. But that's what made me think, oh my gosh, I need to study this a little more. And then I started reading every single line before and after that with a different lens. And I also researched, I think it was you told me, that Lynn Nottage wrote another play called Sweat that takes place before this that Jason is in. And it talks about what happened to him. And I didn't get to read the script, but I got to do some research on it, and that really helped inform that. And I also, as a kid, used to have some anger issues, so I was able to kind of think back on that and really build up what that feels like in general. And honestly, my biggest revelation was kind of the opposite of Daniel's, where he said Raphael kept his head down. I think Jason kept trying to speak up because he felt that he had to.
So earlier, as Mr. Bill said, we were at lunch, and he kind of enlightened me to a new term, well, a new to me term, socially justice impacted individuals. So justice impacted individuals, when you first said the person that served time comes to mind, but not often their family and their friends and things like that. So can you speak to how this really, and anybody, how this affects people's families and friends, and how they leave home and then it's like the pause. Then you come back and it's like, well, where's everybody?
So, you know, we're constantly, particularly right now, developing more and more language about what it means to be formerly incarcerated and what it means in the community. So usually if I'm at a speaking engagement, I'll just ask the question, how many people are system impacted? You know, and people kind of like what that means in their head. So if I was to ask this room, how many people in here are system impacted? And by a raise of hands, how many people? So typically people take that to mean that they've been incarcerated. But what it actually means is that you know someone who's been incarcerated, or you in a family member of someone incarcerated, you're a friend of someone who's incarcerated, or you are in a community where people are incarcerated, because once somebody leaves that community, it impacts the community on every level, economically, socially. When they re-enter, it impacts the community on every level. So actually, everybody is justice impacted. You know, so when we start thinking about it that way, then we become stakeholders in trying to figure out how do we make systemic change. And that's what James and I was discussing at lunch, you know, so glad you remember that, bro.
My memory ain't too bad yet.
You know, one thing that we've experienced in KPAP, and been doing this over 17 years now, is that when the men come in, and KPAP, they bring men from all around the state of Michigan. I mean, Harrisburg, Dundee, Dearborn, and they come from all across the state of Michigan, but some of them will end up at the Benton Harbor KPAP. But what happens with some of these guys when they get out, some of them come to the church and become regular members of the church, but some of these guys go back to their places where they live. What's interesting about this is that they go back to their homes, and some of these are dads, and they're married and they have kids. And a lot of these guys from Dearborn, Dundee, Detroit will come all the way back to get themselves baptized as well as their children, and say, hey, I want to show you what impact that how my life has changed when I was in the system there. And so we've had men and their wives and their children come all the way back to, and I do it right out at Silver Beach, and we just have a big picnic, a big hoopla, and celebrate the baptisms of the fathers, the children, and the spouses, because of one man's change, and it just goes to show you that when a man's life changes and when a man takes his rightful place in the house, then everything else follows through, and the wife, the kids, and everybody's affected in the household. So I just wanted to share that.
So we talked a little bit about what change we're looking for, the tools that we use. So in what ways are you as practitioners noticing that we need more? Where are we needing more?
I think we need more of everything. You know, when you, like you just said about impacting the community, one thing that we don't think about, not me, but so many people in the community, you know, when we have people in poverty, when we have kids who are hungry, when we have families that are broken, it impacts the entire community, not just, you know, a lot of times Benton Harbor gets a bad rap, but the people who live in the surrounding communities need to be thinking of everybody that lives in Benton Harbor, the kids in Benton Harbor, as their own kids, as their own community, their own family. You know, we often have people, and I think we're experiencing this right now in our country, where, you know how the saying that people say, like, you know, everybody getting something, it's not pie. Like, we're all going to have rights. We're all going to have freedoms. We're all going to have these things. So don't try to hoard them. Don't try to keep them from other people. And I think that in our community, we see that a lot. When you look at our community, and I was just working on something for work, and the median income in St. Joe is like $70,000. And the median income in Benton Harbor is like 22 or something like that. And that's ridiculous. And as a community, we need to be working to make sure we don't all have to be equal. There's always going to be people who have more and people who have less, but we should be working to make sure that all of our kids have a great education. All of our kids have the opportunities to go and do bigger things. All of our kids have the ability to sleep safely at night, to walk the streets safely during the day and at night. But we oftentimes hoard things and think that other people, well, they just deserve this, or they, you know, they're used to it. No, we need to be taking care of each other. And that is the problem that I feel that we're seeing in this country right now. We have it on a micro level here, but we're watching it happen on a macro level across the country.
Like thunderous applause. Thank you for that. So can anyone speak to like specific interventions that you feel or you've seen through some of the people that you serve that we just don't have here yet? It's okay if you know. Go ahead.
So I'm not from St. Joe or Benton Harbor. I'm from Chicago. Just full disclosure. You know, but I mean, it's a beautiful community. I will be back to test this beach out. You know, and hopefully do some work with GhostLight Theater. So I did 35 years of prison, and I came out. I was literally, after my conviction was overturned, kicked out of the prison. They like literally pushed me out. You know, because I wasn't mad at them. You know, let's get that point clear. But I came out, and you know, thank God I had some family left after 35 years, because parents, aunts, uncles, you know, I come out the second oldest person in my family. My sister, you know, had a place for me to stay because I had no credit. No one would rent to me. I had no work history. You know, people would look at me like, you know, even though I was the exoneree, someone who's been proven not guilty, you know, where have you worked? So people were reluctant to hire me. Thank God that we have a a growing, burgeoning community of people who have been out for a long time, starting businesses or building relationships with people who have businesses. Or both of my employees, my bosses, are formerly incarcerated in the programs that I work in. And I'm formerly incarcerated, and I'm already employing other people, so, and like, I got out. December 12, 2023, a little over 14 months ago. So I have a place, now. A friend of mine took a chance and rented me an apartment. I pay my rent on time. So what we need more of is just like this. You know what I mean? Because we have to be the ones responsible for taking care of each other. And we need everybody at the table like this, having this conversation, So if we were to talk about what more is needed, we just need more of this. And people willing to listen, people really, willing to empathize. And, that play was just so phenomenal. I mean, I can't keep thinking about it, because it just really captured, like, I want to make the perfect sandwich now. You know what I mean? Obviously, I like sandwiches, but, so that's like in pursuit of your dreams. In your dreams, you can't be selfish with your dreams. Your dreams got to include other people. So like the hoarding of resources. We can't hoard resources. We got to share them out. So that's what we need more of, just kindness and human spirit.
Thank you.
I definitely agree with that. You hit it right on the nose. I agree with that. We definitely need more of this, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I will just say, Paul and Lauren, you guys know me 11 years ago. I worked in a financial aid office at Southwestern Michigan College as a 24-year-old kid. Lauren, she knows the best. Cheerful, smiley guy. I would have never thought I was going to be a parole agent. And when I had my interview, I remember walking out of there and saying, they're not going to hire me. They're like, this kid, he's too nice. He's too, because I ultimately thought, and I know you guys are probably looking at me, he's a parole agent. I thought parole agents, parole officers were mean, just suit wearing, mean guys. I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to fit in. But I think the reason why they hired me, because they saw that I wanted to help in the community. And I know you guys probably don't know a lot about Michigan Department of Corrections. We are sincerely here to help people. I work closely with Mr. Palmer here. We do in-reaches, and we do in-reaches while these guys are incarcerated, and they have access to employment. So just like what Mr. Bill was saying, I supervise guys that's been in prison 40 years, 35 years, and they're afraid, but we're here to help them. So we help them with housing, we help them with employment, and I always say there's no excuse for a guy. I would say probably about 95% of my caseload they're working. And I say if they're not working, it's just because they don't want to. They don't want to. We find them jobs. I had a guy, he just got out last month, and he had a job within a week, and Mr. Palmer's on top of it. My guy's hitting me up, hey, I need a referral for clothing. I'm like, I haven't even heard from Palmer yet. What's going on? But I send that over to him. But I definitely agree. We need more of this, and there is help. Yes. There is help out there. So.
Specifically, what marginalized communities are we trying to reach? Nobody wants the elephant?
I think that if you paid attention to the play, you saw people from all different backgrounds that were all marginalized in some way. So I don't think that we are specifically trying to reach, young black men, single mothers. We're trying to reach all of them. Even, and I can't remember your character's name right now, but the white supremacist, like Jason, even, you know, his character is another thing that we're watching play out in a macro level across our country. And what can we do to impact that so that we don't see that happen? Like, I think that despite being a majority, there's something that is making that community feel as if they're marginalized. And so what can we do to impact and help everybody lift up? You know, what is it? A rising tide lifts all boats. Is that the quote? Like, we need to be helping all aspects of our community.
So, and I agree with you, and it's not about what I agree with, but Dr. Feldman did a jail study recently, and I just pulled it up because the conversation kind of reminded me of it. And I agree, like, we should be helping everyone, but his study concluded that Black people were booked into Berrien County Jail for felonies at a rate that is triple their percentage of the county population. Right? Go ahead.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I was thinking about this before I left my house earlier today. I have an interesting background, I guess, because I grew up in St. Joe, and Black girl, St. Joe, however many years ago, you know, St. Joe today is 1,000 times more diverse than it was when I was growing up, right? But one of the things that I bring that perspective is I watched kids from my high school do drugs. I watched kids from my high school. One time I remember pulling up to a stoplight and a group of kids from the school were driving around drinking because they didn't have anybody's house to go to that weekend. So they're just driving through town drinking. And me and my friends were like, what are they doing? But I watched kids get away with so many things that other kids don't get away with. And like I said, I work for the foster care system, and the first time I went to a juvenile delinquency docket for one of the kids on my caseload, I was like, I remember so-and-so from high school doing that. I remember so-and-so from high school doing that. But it was the brown and Black kids, the poor kids, that were getting marched into juvenile delinquency court. And I think that we have to insist that, and I've said this to the sheriff multiple times, well, our former sheriff, multiple times, either you arrest those kids or you don't arrest these kids and you give them a second chance. So you need to be fair across the board. And he said, well, I've arrested kids from St. Joe before. Come on. Yeah, you've arrested a kid here and a kid there. You probably still remember the names of the kids because it's been so few. But you know that you are patrolling the streets of Benton Harbor 10 times harder than you are patrolling the streets of St. Joe or any other town in this county. And so I think that it's very important that we as a community insist that you either police everybody the same or don't. I mean, we have to insist it. We have to force it. And, you know, we talk about activism. We talk about protests and things like that. We have to hold our leaders accountable. And when I see our current sheriff standing in his uniform next to a person who's running for president who talks about, you know, not following the law anymore when you're arresting people, that bothers me, because who is it going to impact more? Black and brown youth. So it just, I mean, I think that we need to be having those conversations, like you said, but I think we also need to push our politicians, our leaders to treat everybody equally.
Thank you for that. So I hope she doesn't hurt me for this, but we have the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club in the audience, and I would love to hear your perspective on. Come on down, Alloy Blackman. I would love to. So I would love to hear your perspective on. Go ahead. I would love to hear your perspective on what our youth are facing in terms of our legal system. How did you term it earlier?
Yeah, we call it the
criminal legal system. Got it. So, how are our kids faring in the criminal legal system?
Okay. Am I on? Thank you, James. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know what? Our kids are dealing. So, you know, in terms of the justice system, a lot of our kids have family members that have suffered situations. And so for many of them, they're just trying to figure out how do they be and deal with what's going on in their lives. And oftentimes, many of them will say, I don't want to commit or do what I'm around, but the reality of the situation is I can't get away from it. Many of our kids, unfortunately, are dealing with situations where they're home instability, as they call them, couch surfing, just trying to figure out where to stay, where to get a good meal. You know, I'm glad that the club is present within the community because they know it is a safe place, but we're only open to 7 o'clock at night, and they still have to figure out. So for a lot of our kids, I think they're just trying to figure out how to get by. And what we're trying to do, working with the likes of Charmaine and others, to say, hey, the best thing that you can do is get an education, because this too shall pass, and you are capable of so much more. But it's hard for them to focus on that when everything else around them is falling. And so, you know, for many of our kids, it's just, how do I get by? You know, I love them because, you know, they have strong resilience. They don't realize that what they're doing, the trauma that they're dealing with is even trauma. They just call it their life. And that's just what they deal with. So, thank you.
I'm going to pay for this. Oh, I thought someone was going to say something. So for opening this up to the cast too, how can we use artistic expression as a way to educate about the real issues? And to add to that, we actually had a group, 2 groups of Boys and Girls Club students that got to see this play. And the other day, we got to talk to a group of young men. And I'm not sure if this was their first play or not, but their reaction to it was like big, right? So how can we introduce our youth to things like this to get them to, you know, just kind of express themselves in a different way?
Hey James, Mr. Hudson has something he'd like to say.
Oh yeah, perfect person to answer. I'm back. So Mr. Hudson, did you have any feedback for that one?
Well, I didn't hear what was said just recently. So, but you're listening, and it's been so informative, and I'm so, again, very, very thankful to be here and be a part of this. But I remember, like I said, I grew up in Benton Harbor, graduated from Benton Harbor High School, went to Detroit and discovered theater. It was through theater, through the story. We talk about the empathy or the identity that you find yourselves in characters and stories. You begin to see possibilities that it's hard to consider otherwise. You know, in the community, we have parts of stories, but you don't really get a chance to look deeply into it. And I remember the first play I saw was at the Detroit Repertory Theater. It was the first professional play, and it just blew my mind. But I had to sit with it, and it opened my just the possibilities. And I don't think movies quite have that impact. I think something about theater that's interactive. And so one of the reasons I wanted to be involved with this theater in this community, and just to all the things that we talked about, the theater community can have such a huge impact, especially on our children, without us having to necessarily preach or teach or whatever. It's interactive without being forced into it. It's opening up the world in a way that you have to consider everything that you thought before. And theater for me has been, I mean, I've worked in it for the past 60 years, but I just think it's so important. So I agree with everything that's been said, and I know that so much work needs to be done, and I know that you guys are doing it, and a lot of people. But I also just really want to I don't know, you don't even need reminding, but just be aware that supporting the theater and getting our kids involved, because it opens up possibilities in a way that I don't see anything else that can have that kind of impact, and allow us to realize choices before we have to deal with them in life. I hope some of that made sense, but yeah. So I just think it's so important. I'm so happy that you guys are here and the theater is here, and I really just I'm hoping the community will support not just this theater, but theaters all over, because during the 60s and 70s, we had a thriving community theater, Black theater, but just community theaters all over. They kind of went away, but I think we shouldn't forget the power that can happen when you sit inside of a theater or when you step into those roles, and the impact that it can have on lives.
Mr. Bill, I would love to hear your response to that.
Yeah, Mr. Hudson, who you gonna call? Couldn't help but say that. So you think about why I'm here. Like I said, just a little over 14 months ago, I was in prison serving a de facto life sentence. And, the family that hosts me here, their daughter played a very important role of getting me out of prison. And part of the reason that they recognized me and took on my case because I wrote a play that was nationally acclaimed, So it's like, okay, theater kind of helped me get here. But when Darian and I started the theater program in prison, guys was kind of laughing, like, theater in prison, are you serious? And we put on our first play, and the warden was inundated with letters upset. We had a 300-seat theater in this prison, and we packed it out. But she got so many letters. It's like, look, y'all have to do an encore, And literally hundreds of guys over the course of the 5 years, when we ran hundreds and hundreds of guys from age of 20 to in their 80s, participated in the plays and concerts and poetry slams that we created. And like, I remember, like, right before I got out, I had to be the person that would say no, because everybody wanted to push boundaries. You can't push boundaries too far in prison. and the guys would get mad because, like, no, you can't say that. No, we can't do this. No, man, you one of them. But I would just get such a thrill of seeing these bonds that were created over the course of a start of a production to the end of the production. We would purposely put people in productions who otherwise wouldn't talk to each other. And to this day, they are friends. We just sent hundreds of pictures inside the system because we started our little theater company in April, and we performed at Steppenwolf Theater and Around, in January. We sold it out. I mean, people were like, they're sweating us to do it again, So it's like the power of theater builds community. And we're trying to tell people, like, if you really want to build community, you got to have something that everybody can participate in. So I just wanted to piggyback on Mr. Hudson, and just reaffirm what he said. And just, this community really needs to support GhostLight Theater, because this is a vehicle that can help solve a lot of the issues that happens between St. Joe and Ben Harbor. This can be the bridge to bring people together and like fix some of this stuff. But people, I would, if it was me, I would take some people from Ben Harbor and make them play a character that live in St. Joe, and put some people in St. Joe, make them play, and then rehearse that for a while. Let's see what that mix look like. But it actually works. So that's what I wanted to add. So this is Darius Franklin, who played so many villain roles in prison. Like me, every time we needed a villain, we'll call DF. You know?
Greetings, everyone. A pleasure being here amongst you all, and a pleasure seeing this beautiful cast put on that ensemble. We really enjoyed that. To piggyback off what Brian is saying, yeah, it definitely does play a role in building bonds and also just showing people how those across the fence live, you know what I mean? So it can help bridge gaps and things of that nature. And he always put me in some of the wildest characters that I hated, you know what I mean? But in the end, similar to like how this brother was saying, you do kind of learn to look at things from the perspective of those you may despise, you know what I mean? And overall, it helps you grow as a person. So before then, I had not an inkling of the power of theater, you know. So I could thank Brian for that. Even though sometime to this day, I'm still salty at the character roles he ended up putting me in. But it come with the territory, though, you know? Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Yep. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists? Miguel, you mind passing? Miguel, you mind passing? Thank you. Sorry to enlist you.
You know, you talk about the fact that theater is life, that unlike movies, theater for the actors and for the people who are watching, especially the ones that are getting spit upon in the first 3 rows when it's really, it's much more powerful, much more powerful. It's actually an experience you live. And because of that, you learn from it, as opposed to a movie where you just don't necessarily learn. So my question is, we all know here that GhostLight is a wonderful theater, and we have a lot of really wonderful theaters around here, but as far as Benton Harbor goes, why can't there be, and maybe the question doesn't even deserve anything more than a chuckle, but why can't there be a theater company for the students? Why can't there be a special part to Benton Harbor's educational system that involves getting students in a big way, in a broad way, no pun intended, to perform in theater, serious and sometimes really the kind of theater that people would raise their eyes at and say, oh, they're too young for this. Well, they're not too young for this. But why can't that happen here?
So, interesting you say that. Ben Harbor actually has a really rich history of theater. So when I was in high school, we had the Colfax Players. We had different things. Weren't you a member? Oh, you weren't? Okay. But oh, okay. Yeah, me too. Me too. But Colfax Players was a real thing when we were in high school. So I think it's not a thing we need to create, but a thing we need to reinvest in. Yeah. Oh, Ms. Mamie.
I just wanted you to tell us about what your elementary school was. Oh, yeah. And Benton Harbor was famous for our musicals. We did everything. With Miss Archer and Miss Mine, and well, that's before you all's time, but we always did theater. And then our churches, always, we did things, Christmas, Easter, whatever holiday it was. And so there are still people here. And so I want you to tell us about your elementary school.
Sure. So I went to Creative Arts Academy. It was, yes. But so it was up on North Shore, and basically we did every type of art there was. Every lesson we learned had arts intertwined throughout it. And if you look around our community, you can see several examples of why that works. And it was always this thing where, you know, there were 3 magnet schools, and these 3 bodies of students got to experience this. But honestly, I don't think it's a thing that you have to qualify to have this experience. I think everyone should have had it. And there's no reason not to give art to every kid. So, yeah.
Hi, I would like to know your thoughts on using theater as a vehicle for adolescents to explore identity.
I'd like to see who's gonna take this.
What was the question again? Can you say it again? Can you say it one more time?
Okay.
Can you say it one more time?
I'd like to know any of your thoughts on theater as a vehicle for adolescents from 13 to 26 as a vehicle to explore identity.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Hey, so Mr. Hudson, do you have any comments on the question, how can we use theater to allow our youth to explore identity?
Yeah, I think that the wonderful thing about theater is that it's a doorway to explore life. I mean, I don't think there's any limit. But the one thing I wanted to add was when I grew up with Mrs. Mime, somebody mentioned Mrs. Mime, she was my theater teacher in high school. But coming from the projects, I never felt that theater was ours. It seemed like it was something, you talk about theater, you think about, you think about Broadway or it's always removed to someone else. My friends who were in St. Joe, there was a certain sense of entitlement, like not that automatically things would naturally go to them, but I somehow had to ease my way in. I had to kind of, feel my way in a restaurant, or we tend to hold back because there's not the feeling of being welcome. What I love about what Paul and the guys at GhostLight is they've opened the door and made everyone welcome. When I got involved in theater, a lot of parts, I went to Wayne State, but certain roles didn't go to people of color. That I think that's changed over the years. But I guess what I'm saying is we really have to make an effort to let children, young people, especially in Benton Harbor, know that you're welcome. This is a space that is yours, is a space where you can explore. And these stories are stories that you can identify with. Theater, in terms of exploring, there's no limit, and it's visceral. It's real. But I think the community will lay back because they think, oh, theater, that's somebody else. And I think we need to own it and claim it. And when there are a lot of people who will wait, and I'm one of those. What I welcome being a part of this because I can sit back and say things need to happen, but somebody else needs to do it. All these things are possible. Just somebody has to go, let me take the lead in this. Maybe this is my area where I can, but so I guess I'm just really want to emphasize that we have to make an extra effort to let our kids know that this is your world too, and you are welcome, and you can own it, and it is life-changing. So yeah, and you can explore identity, whatever. It's the world, it's life, and theater is definitely a place to do it. But you got to get them in the theater, and you got to know that this is just like church is welcoming. Theater should also be welcoming to everyone.
Oh, he gonna film it. Well, it's interesting. Like, I think when I first started doing theater or acting, it was, for lack of a better term, more of a selfish thing. It's like, okay, I can sing this, I can do this. I'm gonna be in the spotlight. That was kind of the idea at a younger man's age. I'm still young, by the way, but as a younger man. But it wasn't until I started working with programs like After School Matters in Chicago, at the Miracle Center, which was based in a mainly Latinx community, and almost like these kids were like forced to be in this program. You okay? Okay. No, just make sure you're good. Amen. It's all good. It's all good. And it was teaching high school students who maybe 5 of them cared about theater, and they were kind of just in programs just to keep them out of trouble, in a sense. But I think I started realizing that how impactful theater can be is if you can showcase or provide them opportunities to not only just act, but to write, but to create costumes, create their own sets and things like that, giving them tutelage in that way. And you can see how people can just blossom. I had this one kid, his name was Trayvon, and he was like basically mute. Like the first day I got there, but I was like, "Come on, man, come on, do this thing." He would do it and do it, and by the end of the program, like 3 years in, he was like, "Yeah, what's up, Aaron? How you doing?" He was like a ladies' man and all this type of thing. It was crazy, and I think continuing to find people who are younger to give them a platform. You can see how things like. Isis right here is a wonderful, I think, example of that. She was like, "Hey, I wrote a play." I'm like, "All right, cool. Let me read it." "Oh, you got something here." And then we, ended up producing the play. And this girl can't stop writing now. She keep writing and writing and writing. And I think, giving space and holding opportunity for people who are young, that's how theater continues to thrive, because it used to be an old white person's game, but now it's so much more, so many stories that could be told. And then we need people like Lin-Manuel Miranda, people like that to continue to make stories and shape stories. And if you see people who look like you, to continue that ideology to keep going and going and going, that's how we have so many. I think now I look at casting calls and stuff, and I'm like, damn, there ain't nothing for me in this one. Hold on. But that's cool, because you're seeing such diverse opportunities come about, because people are inspired and continue to be inspired, and younger, creating wonderful work. So I think it's creating those programs, and like you were saying, keep implementing those. They've always been here. It's just continue to bring them back and to enforce them, and even if I was kicking and screaming, come on back. So I think that's all I got to say for right now. All right, cool.
Got one back here, and one here.
One more thought on using theater as a vehicle to kind of identify yourself. The cast has heard this a lot, but a couple years ago, I was in a production of The Outsiders, and our lead, Ponyboy Curtis, was played by a female-to-male transgender man, and he wasn't out to his family at all at that time. So when I got the email, I was like, "Why? That's interesting. We have a girl playing Ponyboy." And then I met him, and I was like, "Oh, no, you're just keeping that a secret still from your family." So I've gotten to see firsthand how theater, because we were such a welcoming community, as Mr. Hudson said, we all should be, I got to see him be more confident in his identity. And eventually he did come out to his family, and even though they weren't as accepting as he had hoped, he was still able to do it, and he knew that he had a support system to fall back on because of theater.
We have a question right over here, and we'll come back this way.
Hello, I'm Judy Bradshaw, and I really enjoyed this play a lot. Okay. I really enjoyed this play a lot because at the end of it, there was a lot of hope still, that even though people are incarcerated, they can be creative, which the prison system should have more creativity perhaps in there. But I saw a play called Lisi in Chicago that was about the family of the, I don't want to say prisoner, but the prisoner that came home. And it showed all these different emotions and stuff like that. And it was very enlightening, because usually we're not that close to, to family to really have to welcome somebody in the house and stuff like that. And also, I wanted to know about, you were saying that you worked for people that developed a business. So I was wondering how they got into business in the first place. Your employers. Mr. Beals. Thank you.
To you next. I work for That's all right. It's we are a reentry program. It was started by Avalon Best-Gaston, and she is a phenomenal woman who did some time in prison and came out with a fire in her belly to do something about the prison system. And she started writing grants, and those grants came to fruition, and she started that organization. And I actually joined that organization while I was still incarcerated. She was giving us legislative updates. I was a paralegal in the prison system, so that was important to have somebody care enough, to tell us what was actually happening in the legislature about laws, particularly those that impact criminal justice. So, she wrote, she literally raised a lot of money through writing grants and putting her ideas out there. And now she has a coalition that has over 500 incarcerated people, and they play a part in the coalitions that we create on the outside for reentry organizations. We inform them from people who are still doing time what they need, because the prison system doesn't stay the same. The difference between the prison system when I went in the 1980s to what it is now is vastly different. I don't want to take the time to explain all. Really, really different. And restore justice. Wendell Robinson went to prison at 17 years old. He had natural life. And a program started, Restore, and they started going into the system and visiting because they were particularly interested in teenagers getting life sentences, just thought that was too unfair. And the Supreme Court, in a Miller case, decided that no one who was a juvenile should get a life sentence because of the brain science proves that, you don't even start making rational decisions until you're at least 25. This is what the Supreme Court of the United States says. So the states, we put pressure, and many states changed the law. So they got Wendell out based on that law, and they brought him in as an apprentice. Then he became an associate. And right now, he's the executive director of a statewide policy organization that's very, very effective. And he makes sure that he hires people when they gotta get out of prison. Not only do he hire you, he give you a 401k plan, he give you health care, so, it's this is the people I work for. I'm really proud to work for them, and I hope to emulate that with what we're doing with Mud Theater.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just so overwhelmed by this play. I was deeply touched by it. And this is why. I was born and raised in this community. I've worked here in this community all my life. I am the president and founder of the Benton Harbor Charter School Academy. The only reason why I'm saying that is because if Mr. Paul wants to come do something over at the charter school, hey, I might be your entry. But I just want to say, when I was raising my little girls, I was taking them over to the Twin City Players. Every time Twin City Players in St. Joe had a play or something, I would gather up my little girls and say, come on, we going over there. Because I wanted them to see the arts And then when we got brave enough to go back, because my husband wasn't interested at the time, when we got brave enough, I would even take them over to Chicago so that they could see plays. And it would just be me and them going through, trying to see it. I'm just so proud of this GhostLight Theater. I'm just so proud of it. My friend Mamie invited me. She was like, girl, we gonna go see class. I was like, yes! And I just wanna thank the cast. Oh my God. I was taking my little old lady nap. After church, I usually take an old lady nap. And I kept kind of dozing off, but every time you guys would snatch me back in. So I just wanna thank you and thank Mamie for inviting me.
Yeah, yep. Yep. Go ahead.
All right. First, I want to say I applaud you for your demeanor. You say you just got out last year, 2023. It's 2025. You did 30-some years. I applaud you for your demeanor. I did 12 years, and I couldn't sit in a room with these many people. You know me, with a demeanor like that. First, second, my name is Marcus Johnson. I'm a native of Benton Harbor, Michigan. I did 12 years incarcerated. I was listening to some of y'all questions, what need to happen, things of that nature. I'm the founder of Young Kings and Queens Incorporated in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And the model that we developed, I believe a lot of people started trying to emulate it, and I believe it should be emulated here, maybe. You said, what do the youth need? I believe, even with this theater, you need a youth-led board that can make decisions. Some of these youth make better decisions than some of these adults. You know, I'm just keeping, you know, if you got, like you say, a open platform or a safe space with boundaries, you see what I'm saying, that you know, that they can move about, they can make great decisions. So Young Kings and Queens board is youth-led, you know, and another thing with developing something for the youth, a lot of adults, you know, and I ain't talking about no one in particular, but a lot of adults get to adulting, you know, without hearing the youth. You know, I just wrote a book called 80s Babies that will be getting released in April. And I'm speaking on a lot of things, man, because I see it with my own eyes. Like, in a 5-year span, I watched some of the same individuals come in and out prison 2-3 times in 5 years. So that means you coming in with a year, 2 years, getting parole, coming back home, coming back in. So I was wondering what is leading them to that. Lack of opportunities. It's the lack of opportunities. So, like I said, once again, I just want to applaud you, you know what I mean, for your demeanor that you have right now. I've been free 10 years. January 6, 2025, it made it 10 years. And, you know, and I will be, one other thing, I had to solidify myself, you know, in the Kalamazoo area, and I have completed everything that I said I was going to complete there. So right now, I'm looking for a home in Benton Harbor. So if y'all know somebody who renting the house, selling the house, let me know, because I'm coming back to Benton Harbor.
Man, so, oh.
Thank you, everybody here in this room. I'm just so proud of everybody being here. This is like so special to me. But I wanted to talk to Alloyd for a second, because Alloyd sent 2 groups of kids last week, and then they told other kids they missed out. And we had a group meet with the cast Friday night, was it? And it was 10 all boys. And those boys' eyes and ears were pinned back watching y'all. And they were so full of questions and so thoughtful and just so engaged. And my takeaway from that was, that can't be the last time those 10 boys are engaged. So you guys said this is what we need more of, this kind of engagement. Those kids need to see themselves on the stage like they did that night, and I'm here for it. So let's keep it going. So that's all I want to say. Alloyd, thank you so much.
If I could add too, what was your name, Marcus? Marcus. Thank you for your comments and welcome home 2 times. What you said about youth having a voice and like youth-led boards and things like that, that's what started me in caring about my community. So as a club kid, we got to be a part of this grant program through the Kellogg Foundation where we had a model called the Youth and Adult Partnerships, which is basically what you described. So in this, and it took a long time for us to get used to our voice being just as powerful as an adult's voice. And it took a long time for them to get used to it too. So we would come up with these crazy ideas and they would say, okay, what else, right? And you got to think like, what? We can do that? But it's not just saying I can do something, it's also funding what my idea is, right? So a lot of times we'll say, yes, you can do it, but with what? Right? So like that voice has to come with resources too. With that, I really think that's something that we should adopt here. And it is at Boys and Girls Club through Keystone and different things like that. But all over the city, in every organization, we should have something that has a youth voice, and not just in name, but we should back it up with like real resources.
Hey, bro.
You see what I'm saying? So a lot of people, they do it for the money. You know what I mean? It really got to be from passion. You really want to see. Because when I started, I was
Yeah. Isis, go ahead.
Okay, so, hello.
Turn it on.
Is it on? Hello? Okay, great. Okay, so I just want to say, I am Gen Z, right? I am a generational Z. And it warms my heart to hear people say that we need to listen to the youth. One of the main things or reasons that I got into theater, I'm inner city, Chicago, right? A lot of stuff in my community, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to find other outlets. I found theater, been in theater ever since. And I find that a lot of my peers who are also Gen Z blossom and reach success when other people listen to us and pour into us. And for a second, I just want to kind of talk to the generations before me and before Gen Z. It's a lot more than just saying we should change, we should do. Pour into us, pour into the generations after you, right? I'm only here because my ancestors did that for me. I walk into a room with entitlement because my ancestors fought for that. So pour into us. We're gonna pour into the generations after us. If you have power, if you have a platform, it is your obligation. It is your obligation to spread that power, right? If you have a platform, money, funding, whatever, pour into the theater, pour into GhostLight, pour into the generations after you, right? I just want to leave that message. If you have power, if you have a platform, it is your obligation to do something. Thank you.
So, thank you, Isis. So with that, Paul told me I had to end. So, so again, thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks for watching the show. It was 8 shows. We had an amazing time. Yes, thank you to our panelists. Yep, thank you. Again, thank you to Mr. Bill. Always good to see you, Mr. Hudson. Also, I didn't get to mention them, but Anastasia, our stage manager. Curtis up there. Curtis, give him away. Mark, give him away, Mark. Paul, huge round of applause. And Lauren, and Paige, and everybody else that helped make this production possible. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Night.